It's a very urban-sounding work. Although Rachmaninoff composed it in the Swiss countryside at his summer villa in 1934, it's evident he's dreaming of New York here. This is the gritty ninth variation, which, as Garrick said, you can hear Manhattan of the 1930s in it. There is one variation, however, that reveals some of Rachmaninoff's more direct jazz influences, and that is the fleet-fingered 15th variation. More on that in a moment, but first, did I mention it's Rachmaninoff's 150th birthday this year? And what better way to celebrate than by binge-watching in-depth courses on the Paganini Rhapsody with Jackie Parker and the formidable Third Concerto with Garrick Olson. Check them out on the Tonebase Premium platform. Enter Art Tatum. Rachmaninoff was one of many classical musicians of his era who heard Tatum perform, including Horwitz and the conductor Leopold Stokowski. Rachmaninoff reportedly said about Tatum, "If this man decided to play classical music, we're all in trouble." Classical pianists can't do that. We can, however, pretend by trying to learn Rachmaninoff's 15th variation. For help on that, back to Jackie.
Okay, so now we're at variation 15. This one's famous, rightfully so, for being very difficult to pull off. Easy to get tripped up, for sure. In case you're wondering where the inspiration for this came from, certainly one active theory that makes perfect sense to me. We know that Rachmaninoff loved jazz. We know that he would go up to Harlem and go to jazz clubs and listen all the time, particularly to Art Tatum and Fats Waller. And if you think of Art Tatum and you think of the kind of way that he played, you know, it kind of makes sense from that light finger technique to have something like this. This variation is all about fast finger work, but it's also about musical phrasing. So if you remember, and that coming from, which comes from this, it's all tied together. We now have, and then again. And it's all related, and you can hear it all relates back to that theme. The difficulty here is that it's constant running 16th notes. I remember the very first time that I learned this piece. It was sometime in the mid-'80s. I was about to go and perform it with the Winnipeg Symphony, my first time ever playing it. And I reserved time in the Steinway basement. It was the old basement on 57th Street where I could go in there sometimes for a couple hours. And there would be all these pianos around. It was a fantastic place to be. And I went down there with my friend Norman Krieger. And Norman was playing through the accompaniment and I was playing the solo part. And we got to this variation. And I said, "So how did that one sound?" And he said, "Well, it was too fast." And I said, "How could it be too fast? It's like fast-moving 16th notes." And he says, "Yeah, but where's the phrasing?" And I was so caught up in the idea that it's marked più vivo and it's got a scherzando marking, and I started to think, well, the whole point of this is that it's really, really fast. Well, yes, it does go fairly quickly, but you need to hear all that phrasing in there. You need to hear, and then this has to be parenthetical, and this as a kind of a reaction, and that kind of saying your main argument again, and this as another reaction, and then opening up and reacting, and opening up slightly less because it's one note shorter that you, and reacting. Then we have a pattern. Then we have an actual official hemiola pattern. It's very clear, 2, 2, 2 in the middle of 3, 4. Then we land on a nice open C, and then it goes sort of crazy with this chromatic pattern. And another one, which which, by the way, the only way I can play that is to really rotate my wrist. Just like that, just a little bit all the way down. It just helps put my fingers in the right place at the right time. Then we're back. Then we have a really interesting variation in the accompaniment figure, which is different from all the other ones. This goes higher. And then we have not just another hemiola, but usually the point at which the conductor starts beating for the orchestra. Up until this point, the conductor's just kind of waiting for you to play all this stuff. The orchestra doesn't need to know. All the orchestra needs to know is the conductor always starts conducting 4 before rehearsal 40. I've heard 4 before 40 so many times it's kind of burned into my head that that's where it is. And it's a hemiola bar.
Truthfully, I didn't play piano. I gave up the piano for 2 solid months and had crying fits at night. I did. I was serious.